Let's talk about ghrelin and the possibility of ghrelin resistance. Ghrelin is best described as the hunger hormone. Ghrelin is produced inside of the stomach but enters into the bloodstream and crosses through the blood-brain barrier and binds to neurons within the brain that stimulate our appetite. Ghrelin is essentially released when the stomach is empty, and the consumption of food decreases ghrelin production. With this, multiple studies have indicated that slow gastric emptying and reduced ability to break down the food that we're consuming decreases the amount of ghrelin we produce because this slowed gastric emptying increases the volume of food within the stomach. And those with rapid gastric emptying have increased hunger due to increased ghrelin levels because they move food into and out of their digestive organs much faster. In addition to this, ghrelin itself also stimulates gastric emptying, and the use of ghrelin in those with clinically slow digestive speeds, such as those with gastroparesis, also known as stomach paralysis, has prokinetic effects in which it can speed up gastric emptying, similar to the way that fiber does in many healthy people. With that being said, this question specifically asks about ghrelin resistance. You know what ghrelin is, next we need to know what resistance means. Resistance is the ability not to be affected by something. And essentially, ghrelin resistance is when the cells that typically respond to ghrelin in the brain and in the gastrointestinal tract no longer respond to elevated circulating levels of ghrelin. You may have an empty stomach and be producing lots of ghrelin, but the cells inside of your brain that should respond to ghrelin abundance by increasing your appetite are not responding appropriately. There appear to be two main ghrelin-resistant populations: those with anorexia and those with obesity. Ghrelin resistance is thought to be mediated by the impaired transport of ghrelin into the brain, reduced expression of the ghrelin receptor, therefore the high levels of circulating ghrelin have nothing to bind to and exert their effect through, as well as a reduced expression of the two proteins AGRP and NPY, which are the two proteins stimulated by ghrelin which have appetite-stimulating effects. All of these mechanisms appear to decrease one's responsiveness to high circulating levels of ghrelin. And in some populations, specifically obese individuals, they have decreased circulating levels of ghrelin in the first place, which could be potentially mediated by constant food intake. However, with that being said, it has been indicated that specifically for those with anorexia, whose conditions may become worse due to the development of ghrelin resistance, it appears that exogenous supplementation of ghrelin or the use of ghrelin receptor agonists, which bind to the ghrelin receptor and induce the same effect, appear to be able to somewhat overcome this ghrelin resistance and stimulate gastric discomfort and increase of food intake and the necessary increase of body weight, indicating that ghrelin resistance may be a physiological driver of anorexia and other eating disorders. And finding ways of exogenously increasing ghrelin receptor activation could potentially be life-saving for many of these patients. With that being said, if you would like an individualized approach to your nutrition and lifestyle to optimize your health, energy, and body composition, send me a DM to sign up for coaching.